Welcome to Author's Excerpt Sunday Podcast. I am your host, Sharise Johnson Moore, and today we have a special guest. His name is Tyler Kania, and it is my pleasure to welcome him to Author's Excerpt Sunday Podcast. Tyler is the author of his book. It is a marvelous, wonderful read, and it is a cultivating process of writing a book of this magnitude. And Tyler, he is a rugby player, a coach, a cybersecurity salesman, a cryptocurrency entrepreneur, and he has so many things under his belt, and he's come through a lot of things in his life to bring him to a point where he has solitude and resolve, and he is very resilient in his writing, in his process, in his life. So, hello, Tyler, and how are you doing today? And
I'm doing great. I'm
all
really
right,
excited to be with you.
all right. Introduce yourself. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. First, my curses. I suffer from bipolar I disorder. This means I have manic episodes as well as severe depression. I've attempted suicide twice, and I've been institutionalized at a mental health hospital. And that's kind of where I had my life saved, and everything kind of turned around. Um, as far as my blessings go, I was a really great rugby player. I had ambitions to play at the professional level. But another curse, I've ruptured my patellar tendon to both of my knees. It's when your knee goes into your quad. It happens once for every 147,000 human years. So to do it twice, it's kind of like discovering life on other planets. But I've made do with, the deck of cards that I've been dealt. I've had to change myself, my vocation many times, having to adapt with bipolar. Like you said, I've worked in cybersecurity. I've been a head coach of a collegiate women's rugby team. I've started a cryptocurrency company, and I've done a lot of things. And now I'm a writer. My book is a memoir. It's called The Maniac with No Knees, and it's about my struggle with undiagnosed bipolar. So I'm hoping to reduce the stigma of mental illness. I'm hoping to show people that they're not alone when they're fighting something like this, and I'm hoping to inform the general public about mental illness, because there is still a long way to go in terms of treating us like other people.
All right, I know that's right. We can't put everybody in one box. Can't put people in a box and just leave them there. And mental health is very important to me, as a individual myself, and I've had my own mental health scares before, where depression, anxiety, suicidal tendencies, and but how I dealt with it was I went to go see a therapist. I went to go see a doctor about it. I went to seek help about what was going on with me. And in this book, The Maniac with No Knees, it is considered a autobiography. Am I correct?
It's a memoir. An autobiography covers someone's whole life. A
Mhm.
memoir just covers a portion of it.
All right, all right. Well, you gotta, So, what inspired you to really get into writing this book?
This is a really great question, so I'm glad you asked it. After I was institutionalized in 2022, I start to realize how fortunate I am. I'm a white, upper middle class, come from a nuclear family, a educated family, and I was blessed with athletic skill and wit and, confidence, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of these people I was institutionalized with, they were ashamed of who they are, and they were afraid to share who they really are with the world. suffer from terrible things like schizophrenia or narcissism, or my roommate had aphasia, which is when you have a trauma that makes you unable to talk for long periods of time. And I formed a friendship with him. I was actually able to make him speak for the first time in several weeks. And, those people, the outcasts of my affliction, inspired me, to kind of speak up. But I didn't know how to do that, and I got my life back together after I was institutionalized. I got a job at the largest cybersecurity company in the world, and I was working hard to get back on the rugby field. Um, and by the spring of last year, I was in the best shape of my life. I was ready to prove to the world what I could do on the rugby field. But my second game, I ruptured my patellar tendon again. And because I'm a substance abuser, my parents withheld painkillers. So I didn't sleep for 3 nights and I went manic. And, when you're manic, you don't care what other people think. You're righteous and you feel powerful and you think a million miles per minute. And in that moment, I decided to share who I was with all my followers on Instagram. I didn't want, people to be confused about me anymore because I had, confused a lot of people. And so I just opened up the notes app and I started telling my life story. And then I had to get hospitalized for the manic episode. And I was treated very poorly in the hospital. But when I got out the next day, I had all this love from my followers on Instagram. All these people were saying how brave and how courageous and great it was that I was sharing my story. And so then, once the manic episode subsided, I was like, I need to put this on paper for the world to see. I can help people with this. So, because of that manic episode, I was fired from my job. I sent an email to the wrong person. And, that was a blessing in disguise because it gave me the next 8 months to focus on my book. And I'm really glad that happened, as weird as it sounds, because what I've put together is something that I'm really proud of.
Okay. Oh, I know that's right. You take your time, write it down, make it plain. You put everything that you feel on the paper. You don't leave out anything, unless you have that desire to. But it frees your mind, and the rest will follow, as I always say.
Yeah,
So,
I will say,
mhm,
it felt like it was divine intervention because, like I said, I had no intentions of writing a book, and then once I started, there wasn't a single day where I didn't know what to write.
right.
Something, a higher power was moving me along, and they saved me from those suicide attempts because I had a story that could help people, and I really do believe that.
Yes, I know that's so true. Everyone has a story to tell, and they must tell it in their own way. Okay, what message or theme do you hope readers will take away from reading your book?
Um, I tell people that struggle with mental illness a few things. Um, these are the three things that worked for me to get me to a stable point.
Hmm.
Number one, you need to find your community. You need to find people that respect you and you can be yourself around. And, for me, that was a rugby team,
Hmm.
right? You need to find a goal. You need to have something that wakes you up each morning and pushes you to become a better person.
Hmm.
For me, that was also rugby and it was also my career and it's also writing. And then the third thing is, you need help, right? My book is about, adventuring across the country and doing all these different things to escape my inner demons. And, it got to the point where I was going to die if I didn't get help, right? I had no choice. And, once you get help, you realize, like, why didn't I do this sooner?
Hmm.
Right? So I had a battle with, medications. It's tough to prescribe a psychiatric illness because there's a lot of things that work for different people. I
Hmm.
cycled through 14 medications and some of them had really horrific side effects. Like,
Hmm.
I was put on an early stage trial antipsychotic that made me gay for 3 months. And I've never, I don't have a gay bone in my body. And once I stopped taking the medication, I was a little scarred, but I was no longer gay, which is just crazy.
Mhm.
But eventually I found the medication that worked for me. I'm on a mood stabilizer called lithium, and
Mhm.
that saved my life. And I'm on an antipsychotic called olanzapine, and that saved my life. So,
Mhm.
I it can be tough to ask for help, especially, you know, the personification of masculinity and men just not wanting to admit that there's something wrong.
Mhm.
I was an athlete for all my life, and everybody, applauded my courageousness. I would play a rugby game on a broken ankle, and people would applaud that. But when it comes to your mental health,
Yeah.
you know, you're not alone, and you should ask for help. It's not the same as sports.
Yes, it's
So those are some of the core values I tried to put together in my book.
okay. So, how was your writing process for your book? What does the writing process look like for your book?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it was my first time writing, so I was kind of learning on as I went.
Mhm.
Um, I messed around with a few different things at first. Like I was only gonna write about my time away from rugby.
Mhm.
But then I realized rugby was the biggest theme of my life, and I couldn't leave it out.
Mhm.
But I was really struggling to find someone in the business that could help me or teach me or edit my book.
Mhm.
And, you know, a friend of mine who played rugby in college for a different university said, "Oh, I have a teammate that, was getting his PhD in English literature. He could help you."
Okay.
And, I knew this guy. I had been friends with him in college a little bit,
Mhm.
and he agreed to edit my book, be the structural editor for only $20 an hour, which was way undervalued. And he really pushed me to go beyond the narrative of my life story and
Mhm.
talk more about introspection and how I was making myself feel and how I was making other people feel.
Oh,
And that was a tough pill to swallow, right? Because for a lot of the time, I was literally insane, and I wasn't treating the people around me the way they should have been treated. And so I had to swallow a lot of pride when I was putting this together, because I was admitting, like, okay, you were a little screwed up here. This is
mhm.
how other people were feeling at that time. Um, but, that came together. And, from there, it was about, you know, line editing, making sure you have the perfect sentences in the right spots, making sure the book ended in the right way, making sure my language was appropriate.
Mhm.
Um, and, I put a lot of effort into it. I had a lot of help from the publisher, from my editor,
Mhm.
and now with getting speaking engagements, I've gotten a lot of help from my publicist.
Okay. All right. Sound like you on your way then. You on your way. We with us being on our way, what advice would you give an aspiring author?
Um, Number one, you have to have read quite a bit of books. You have to have a command over language
Mhm.
that only comes with like years of, reading. Um, I was so depressed that I spent an entire year just reading in my room. I wanted to escape my world and go in someone else's world.
Mhm.
I got to the point where I was reading about 300 pages a day, and I was reading, Infinite Jest, which is the most difficult English language book in the
Mhm.
world. And that year, I didn't know I was going to become a writer, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without it. Um, Besides that, like, to be a writer, you need to have lived a busy life. You have to experience things. You need to meet new people and try, different jobs and stuff like that. I've had so many different jobs. I've had to adapt to my illness, and that's kind of given me all these different perspectives, right? I have Republican friends and I have Democratic friends, and
Mhm.
I'm somewhere in between, and I can relate to people. And then the last thing, if you want to be a writer, just start writing about what you know, and put goals together. Like for me, every single day I write a one-page short essay and I post it on Instagram,
Mhm.
and that keeps me accountable for doing what I love to do,
Okay.
right? You have to love writing. For me, it's like therapy, right? When you get therapy, you are basically, it's a mirror for your thoughts.
Yes.
And writing is the same way, the same thing. And it's been very therapeutic for me.
Okay. All right. So, are you ready to read an excerpt out of your book for
I'd
us?
love to.
Okay. Maybe just, one or two paragraphs,
Yep.
just to give us a gist of what the book is about.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. This is from chapter 6, Childhood Bedroom. For the first time in my life, I was thinking a lot about suicide. I don't understand why it is taboo, why people are so afraid of it. It's the only thing we all have in common. We're born, we live, we inevitably die. I understand we miss our loved ones, but nothing is more powerful than a memory, and your loved one is doing just fine on the other side. Even when someone commits suicide, don't be sad, be happy. They lived their life the best way they could, and then they controlled their exit strategy. There's no golden doubloon of immortality, people. It's a circle of life. On the last day of April in 2021, I had had enough. As humans, we strive to control our situation throughout our life. Though many things are out of our control, our hope and goals are for us to have the agency to guide ourselves the way we choose. So why should death be any different? I want to be in control of my death, and that's the way I look at suicide. I made a noose, I fastened it up high. I put it around my neck just to test it out, tightened it a little to feel the sensation. I looked out the window. An overcast day of clouds suddenly gave way to a nice, beautiful, late afternoon sun. I thought, David Cobb, one of my best friends, is getting married tomorrow. I might as well stick around a little longer.
Okay. Um, so that was an experience that you had in your life where you was getting ready to commit, you was thinking about committing suicide, and you write it verbatim of how you carry that out, and then it gave you a second thought process of, oh, that's right, my friend getting married tomorrow, so I you know I my well I have to go to his wedding. So with that concept in your head, did that that kind of change your trajectory about what you was about to do?
I'm
um
really glad you asked because this is another one of those weird, funny, divine intervention type things.
mm-hmm,
Because at the time I hadn't played rugby in 4.5 years.
mm-hmm,
When I quit rugby, I threw it out of my life, and that included some of my best friends.
mm-hmm,
Um, a week after I attempted suicide, I was invited to a rugby friend's birthday party,
mm-hmm,
and they convinced me to go watch their next game. It was an exhibition match, informal, and my old college coach was now their men's team coach.
mm-hmm,
So I go and I go to watch, and I'm wearing jeans, and I'm talking to the coach's wife, and she's giving me that old confidence that I had. And then with 10 minutes left, an injury happens on the field, and somehow I end up in the game.
mm-hmm.
And the first time I touched the ball in 4.5 years, I assisted the game winning score. And so then rugby came into my life. Like, I did not want to go to that birthday party. I was ashamed of myself.
Oh,
Um, but I went anyways. And
mm-hmm,
then, it changed my life. From there, I got a job coaching collegiate women's rugby team, and we won a championship. And yeah, that was in a lot of ways a big turning point for me.
oh, okay. All right. Sometimes those thoughts, those positive thoughts, keep us on the straight and narrow. When the positive thoughts come into our head, oh, I gotta go to my friend's wedding tomorrow. Okay, that was, like you said, it's a divine intervention, because God is always in charge of our lives, and sometimes we might think we're doing things. We might think we're doing things our way, but God has a way of always of making us think about things before we do them. He always has this way bringing us back to reality in our minds of, look, you got this positive thing going on, you got this positive event, you have something positive going on, so why would you want to, it kind of makes you think, why would you want to destroy that when you have something positive going on? And and so that's how God makes us think. How has the response been for the release of your book?
Oh man, I'm so blessed. Like, I have a lot of core supporters, that have been following all along on Instagram. I've got a lot of good friends,
Hmm.
and family that, really gave me confidence and supported me. And, for the first 4 weeks when this book came out, it was a best selling new release in three different categories. Um, I've been able to secure a lot of podcasts, a couple, TV interviews, some magazines, and I'm doing my best to get the word out there. I have a lot of people, that I've learned have mental illnesses, and they're cheering me on because it's unique. A lot of people in our situation aren't so keen to share.
Hmm.
So that's been great. The one thing that I don't want people to think, um, is that people look at all the success that this has had for me, and they kind of think that, like, I'm on the other side of bipolar. I've
Hmm.
I've made it.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, this is a lifelong illness, and I
Yeah.
still struggle every day. I have bad substance abuse habits. I get depressed. I'm not suicidal, but I have suicidal thoughts every day.
Hmm.
It's just fleeting. It's just for a moment. It's not going to last. It's not like before when I was keeping a rope in my room. Um, so I just want people to know that, like, I'm still going through it, right?
Hmm.
This book has been great for me. It's really given me a purpose, and I'm
Hmm.
thankful for that, but life goes on.
Yes. What's the most memorable moment of feedback you received from about this book?
Um, well, I'll tell you what just happened today.
Hmm.
I stopped in a small town for like a breakfast sandwich,
Hmm.
and I brought a copy of my book in, because there's a library next door. The library ended up being closed, but I started talking to the owner, and they had a bunch of bookshelves right in the restaurant. And I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I'd like to donate this book," and I told them a little bit about it.
Hmm.
And when I mentioned that I was bipolar,
Yeah.
this small, little Asian guy, I thought he was like 12 years old, but he was actually in college.
Okay.
He said, "Hey, I want to buy a copy of your book."
Okay.
And I said, "Okay, great." And he was like, "Can you sign it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I asked him a little about himself. He was from Hong Kong, and he had just moved to Connecticut,
Hmm.
and he was a college student. And, he asks me, he says, "Are there manic episodes in this book?" And I was like, "You betcha," and I started to explain what mania feels like.
Hmm.
And he was like, "Oh, I know, I know." And I, he was like, I'm bipolar." And I was like, "Oh, wow. Like, oh my God, like, that's great. Like, I love that you're going to read this book."
Hmm.
Um, And so before I finished signing his book, I told him this. I said, "We have superpowers, right?" And he looked at me, and his eyes lit up, and he just started laughing because he knows.
Hmm.
You know, um, Bipolars have a lot of bad stuff that comes with our illness, but our illness also makes us more creative, more curious, more empathetic, more introspective, objective.
Hmm.
When we're manic, we're powerful and we don't care what people think. And
Yeah.
so we do have superpowers. And he knew it. And it was just a heartwarming interaction because I know that he struggles. He knows that I struggle.
Hmm.
But we found that silver lining.
Okay, that is so wonderful. That is a very rare occurrence, where when we talk about subjects when it comes to mental health, and it is where when a person shares that with the world, it's like, okay, well, I have it too. And, they're coming forward and they're speaking up, and they're revealing things about themselves that they might not tell nobody else, And that is so wonderful for you as an author, when you get the good feedback that you're getting from sharing your experience with your life in your book. So I wanted to ask you, how do you interact or engage with your audience outside of your book?
Yeah, like I mentioned, Instagram is ground zero for all of my writing. Every
Mhm,
single day I put something out there.
mhm,
Yesterday I wrote a short essay about being an entertainer. Um, Today I actually wrote about that interaction with the guy at the restaurant.
mhm.
So I mix it up. Sometimes it's opinions on the world around us. Sometimes it's like a poem about addiction.
Yes.
Um, but I like to, I like to have that instant feedback from an audience on Instagram. Like I could post to Medium or Substack, and I do that sometimes, but
Mhm.
I don't get that like instant satisfaction of having people on the spot read your work.
Yeah.
So that's what I do mostly. As far as my book goes, I go to different libraries and I have book readings.
Mhm.
I try and engage with people that way.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Are you working on another book?
I am.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, just like the first book kind of happened by accident,
Yes.
so too did the second book,
Mm.
because I was writing all those short essays on Instagram,
Yes.
and I realized that this I could put these all together and make a book from it.
Yeah.
So, there's a book called Postcards from the Edge by Carrie Fisher,
Okay.
and I'm going to name it the same title. I'm going to say it's inspired by her,
Uh-huh.
because really these are one-page postcards,
Uh-huh.
from the edge of being like suicidal or what have you.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping to do about 100 of them. I've already got like 92.
Okay.
So I'm close. I've got to edit it. I've got to make an introduction.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if I should release it within the first year after my first book, because I do want, my story to kind of have the podium for a while.
Uh-huh.
But if I really worked hard on it, I could probably have it ready in 2 months from now, which is, a good thing to think about.
Yes, it is. So I know that writing is therapeutic for you. And do you plan, you know, in the next in the I would say 5 to 10 years from now, where do you see yourself as an author?
Um, I just want to keep doing it, because I'll get better and better,
Hmm.
and my audience will grow.
Okay.
It can be tough to make money as an author, as a new author.
Hmm.
So I've found some different side hustles along the way.
Hmm.
Um, but writing is what I'm passionate about. I want to put out a few books. I mean, I don't want to get too ambitious, but like a Pulitzer Prize would feel a lot, really good.
Okay. Yes.
I don't want to get ahead of myself, but maybe the first step is getting one of the big five traditional publishers to take one of my books. That would be really an honor, to be in places like Barnes and Noble and stuff like that.
Hmm. Okay. I know that's right. We're always looking for other ways to get to sell this book, right?
Yeah.
So, where can our audience find your book?
You can go to Amazon, search The Maniac with No Knees, or search Tyler Kania. You can go to my website, tylerkania.com.
Hmm.
That last name is spelled Kania.
Hmm.
Um, and then besides that, I haven't shared my Instagram handle yet, but that's Tyler_Kania. So, um, yeah, I'd love to engage with readers. I'd love to have more people read my essays, because, that really drives me to keep going and keep doing better.
Oh, I know that's right. I know that's right. I want to thank you, Tyler, for coming today on Author's Excerpt Sunday podcast, being my special guest of the day. And I want to say, keep your head up, keep making it do what it do for you, okay? And and when you have your next book, come back and share that with us,
Sure.
because I really love what I read when it came to the book summary.
Yeah.
You was very forthcoming and open and honest, and I love that about your story. I wanted to let my audience know Tyler Kania as an author. He is the author of The Maniac with No Knees. It is can be purchased on Amazon and get it today. And it is a memoir. And I want to say, Tyler, thank you so much for coming and come back again. Okay, baby. All
It's my
right.
pleasure. I'd love to. You've been great.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming into Authors Extra Sunday podcast. I am your host, Sharise Johnson Moore, and we'll see you next time on Authors Extra Sunday podcast. All right, babies. Okay, y'all have a blessed day.